Hi, I'm Kat Rosenfield.
And I'm Phoebe Maltz Bovy, and together we are Feminine Chaos. Hello.
Hello.
Special holiday edition.
Yeah, today we do have a sort of a holiday-themed set of topics, and I've got my tree behind me for, added ambiance.
And I've got my door behind me for subtracted ambiance.
Right. It's like Christmas in the trenches. But what is not behind me anywhere in this room or in this household is a Peloton. Phoebe, is there a Peloton in your home?
Yes. Behind that door is my husband with a Peloton underneath an enormous bow.
A Peloton you did not ask for.
Exactly. I am going to be presented with a Peloton against my will.
Yeah, a Peloton is going to be inflicted upon you.
Yes, which would not be so bad because then you can sell it and you have apparently in Canada, probably like $3,000. That's not so bad.
Yeah, those are expensive bikes. So the reason that we're talking about Peloton is that earlier this month, or maybe it was even around Thanksgiving, like American Thanksgiving, to be noted for non-American subscribers, in late November, as holiday ads started rolling out, Peloton, the stationary exercise bicycle that costs approximately 2 months rent and then, another $40 a month subscription for its classes, rolled out this ad in which, if you haven't seen it, a young wife and mother gets gifted a Peloton at her last Christmas. It's been a year since this happened, and she's spent the year since documenting her fitness journey in a series of selfie videos. And at the end of it, turns out that she's created this sort of video diary as a thank you note to the husband who gave her the Peloton the year previous. And people were very upset about this ad for reasons. Phoebe, do you want to describe?
Sure. So I have been, since that ad appeared, crying myself to sleep every night with the knowledge that no. So I take the stance that it was a bad ad and that it was bad for the reasons, not for all of the reasons everybody on the entire internet was saying, because it's a big internet and some people were apparently offended that it was an ad implying that you need a lot of money to exercise, which I would say that it implies you need a lot of money to buy that particular exercise bike / subscription, but I don't know how you would take the leap from there to it implying it costs a lot to exercise in general. Mm-hmm. But I thought that this was basically an ad for a self-improvement gift, and those are always a little tricky. So whether it's like to better yourself, if somebody like if I were signed up for some sort of like evening class to become an accountant, which maybe I should have better skills in that area, I'd be like, like that's probably good. But, I feel a bit like it's in that realm, and that particularly anything to do with the body, a husband buying a wife an exercise bike is like, I'm with the people online who are all like, this is a problematic thing for that reason. Not so much just because it's like generically problematic, because it just seems like it's sort of a bad idea as a gift. And I think what the ad, I guess where I came down on it was really just that, like, who is the ad talking to, basically? And I found that it was kind of talking to the husband who might buy his wife this bike, and speaking to a fantasy that a husband might have, that he would have the sort of wife who would A, want a Peloton, and B, make him a gratitude video about any present, however happy. It just seemed like a very like sort of corny male fantasy in something that's ostensibly about the gift for the woman. And I didn't doubt that there are women who would want this, but it didn't seem specifically to be, to me, for those women. Kat, tell me why I am the hypersensitive snowflake on this topic.
Well, I mean, I think so. The critical
and snowflake for holiday theme.
Right. Okay. Well, you're a very special snowflake indeed.
We all are.
As are we all. But, I felt that this ad, first I felt that the ad did a good job of capturing what people actually really love about these bikes, because the people who do have them, and I know a few, are absolutely wild for them. And, for what it's worth, the one woman I know who has one of these bikes and rides it like all the time, like every selfie she takes is her on the bike. So like, this is a thing that happens, there's this real sense of community and accomplishment. People really, really enjoy their Pelotons. And I thought that the ad did a good job of capturing that. The problem is the only people who are going to appreciate that it captured that are people who already own a Peloton or who know someone who owns one. And knows that it's basically like, a very physically beneficial, but nevertheless kind of a culty community.
So Kat, you have an article about this also.
I did.
You wrote an article about it.
I did. I wrote an article for Arc Digital.
Which you should all read.
It was fun. It's called Stop Gaslighting the Peloton Wife, which is a tongue-in-cheek headline that some people are taking maybe a little bit too seriously.
Oh, no.
For the record, I know what gaslighting is. It's a joke.
Do you know about it though? With its origins in both cinema and Teen Vogue headlines and
right. I mean, it's at this point it can mean anything you want it to.
Certainly can. I got it, I think. Yeah.
But my feeling is that when people started analyzing this ad and ascribing sort of harmful impact to it on the basis that even though it depicts a happy woman receiving a desired gift that fulfills her and that she enjoys using, that somewhere out there, the husband of a woman who doesn't want a Peloton might be watching this, as you said, indulging in the fantasy of being the kind of husband to the kind of woman who wants a Peloton and buying this bike for her for evil reasons because he doesn't like her body and he wants her to be thinner or whatever it is. And I felt ultimately like, we have a cat situation. I felt like that actually was a case of people projecting sort of sexist perspective of their own and maybe, a certain amount of relationship baggage in some cases.
Well, I should say that I do not feel personal pressure in my life to own or ride a Peloton or similar.
I did not.
But I just mean that I think it's undeniably in the culture, this thing of men wanting their wives to be, fit. And I don't think that that's a neurotic invention of the critics of the ad. Like, I think it is a thing out there. And I think that that's partly, yeah.
So what I'll say is, it is a thing. As somebody pointed out to me, on Twitter, she said, I've been in one of these relationships, where I was being pressured and monitored, in terms of how much I was exercising and what I was eating. And the kind of man who does that is going to do it with or without a Peloton in your Christmas stocking. But what was interesting to me was that people were this ad tells a straightforward story.
Does it? Oh, that's what we're going to debate.
Oh, but it does. Okay. But it does.
But it doesn't.
So no. Okay. So here's the thing. It's an ad. So it's not a piece of cinema, which means that if you want to analyze its message, there's an objectively correct analysis, and then there's, incorrect ones. Because it's not, the message of the ad is not, up for debate. It's an ad. It wants to sell you a product. So the message is, our product is good. Our product will make you happy.
But what is up for debate is who is the intended audience for it. And I think, imagine that this were an ad not for Peloton, and this is going to kind of get to the other piece, which I think is a little trickier about exercise, fitness, and how that does or doesn't relate to beauty standards. But let's say this had been an ad for Victoria's Secret, and it was in that ad, or just some other like underwear, whatever, a man had presented his wife with some very sexy lingerie that looked super for the male gaze, let's say, not like comfortable looking, whichever, not that there's anything wrong with the sexy lingerie or the unsexy lingerie, but let's say that had been the ad, right? And the woman had said in the ad, this is what I've always dreamed of. Who was that ad for? You know what I mean? Like, and is that a straightforward message of, well, the wife in the ad is happy? You know what I mean? Like, I guess I saw the Peloton ad as not exactly the same as that. And I think that it's the fitness angle, which I think is what makes it complicated. But some woman in the world, it is not inconceivable, could be happy to be presented with sexy lingerie. That is a real thing. That could be true. That could be her sexuality. There's nothing wrong with it. But the ad would still read kind of as for a man, if that makes sense. Well,
I guess, there's a difference between who is the ad for and what is the ad saying. The ad is for, I guess, ostensibly the person buying the gift. Although in the case of a $3,000 exercise bike, I think the ad is for the couple who is watching it at home, who are likely to maybe have a discussion if it seems like somebody in that relationship wants a Peloton, or is the kind of person who'd like a Peloton. As a really like kind of a fitness junkie myself, when this ad came on while my husband and I were watching TV, I had to turn to him and say, for the record, I do not ever want to receive one of these bikes, because I hate indoor cycling. But, so I think, to say like, this ad targets men, and suggests that they might want to get their wife an exercise bike for Christmas. Like, okay, that's a valid argument. To say this ad, although it seems to be telling the story of a woman receiving a desired gift and enjoying it and thanking her husband for it because she genuinely likes it, it's actually secretly a really shady story about a desperate, abused wife. Having.
What about a middle ground? What about a middle ground position? But I didn't see it. No, because when I read your article, I was thinking, like, I don't see it as that it's an abusive husband. I see it as more like any other realm of these sort of like aspirational, like betterment gifts. You know what I mean? It just seems sort of like let's say like a cookbook for like more nutritious or budget friendly foods that somebody's like, maybe it could be, I mean, even to just forget the gender angle. If either person in the couple had sort of made a casual remark about wanting that, and then they get that as a gift, it's like, it might be the thing they wanted, but it just has this sort of betterment quality. And I think that's part of what struck me about it, just that it's kind of, which doesn't strike me as abusive or like all the stuff about, she's being imprisoned by her husband. That was silly. Obviously it didn't go there, but it just seemed like it could be a bad gift because it's a betterment gift without it being abuse or some kind of really, really fraught relationship where the husband will leave her if she gains 2 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's some sort of middle ground there. And that, I guess, I really want to talk, though, about this fitness angle, because that is your area of expertise and not mine.
Right. Well, I mean, that actually we can segue into that, because I think that, the most important thing about this ad is that it depicts her receiving a desired gift and using it and experiencing a transformation, and this is what is interesting about this ad. She gets on the bike every day. She discovers, to her surprise, that she freaking loves indoor cycling. Like, she loves it. But
if it was to her surprise, why was she getting it in the first place?
Well, I think maybe she didn't expect to be using the bike every day. Maybe she thought she'd ride it like a few times a week. I mean, for the record, I would imagine that the person receiving a Peloton is maybe a woman like this who's, clearly has a job. It's implied, you see her coming home wearing her like corporate clothes. Right. She has a job. She has a child. She's probably into spinning already. but spinning is expensive. You know, if you want to do it if you want to do it 4 times a week and each class is $25, that's like $400 a month. So, you know, eventually the cost of the exercise bike, you know, it ends up paying for itself, but I'm sort of getting off track here. But basically, you know, that you have a woman who's into fitness, who's into spin, you know, who there's not like a question of whether she's going to enjoy doing this. What surprises her is that she loves it so much that she's waking up on purpose at 6 o'clock in the morning to get on the bike. But what's really interesting about the way that they sell this is that you see her experiencing like just pure joy in moving her body, you know, in exercising. She feels a sense of accomplishment. She finds a sense of community. At the end of the ad, she says, and of course she's got these kind of sad eyebrows, so she looks a little scared. She's like, I had no idea how this would change me. Thank you. And it's like, okay, you know, that rang as creepy to people for obvious reasons, but ultimately what's being sold there is like this spiritual transformation, you know, that took place as a result of just, you know, joyful exercising. And what they don't say anything about, I mean, it's never even implied, is that she's undergone a physical transformation.
She may have been thin all along.
Well, I mean, she clearly is. I mean, you can see, you know, when she receives the Peloton, you know, she has the exact same body as she did.
Right. But it's not a body that would be conventionally undesirable.
No, but at the same time, there's absent from this ad is so much of what you usually see when someone's hawking a fitness product. There is not a single shot of like a 6-pack ab glistening with sweat. There's no like long lingering camera work over like the long length of her arm with her tricep popping out.
Right.
Like there's nothing like that. You just see her pedaling away, and at one point she looks over her shoulder and she's like, the instructor said my name, you know, and it's just, it's really different. If you start analyzing this sort of within the framework of what does a fitness product usually look like when it's being advertised on television, this is selling like literally the rewards of exercise in a way that has nothing to do with how it makes your body look.
Okay, so I'm going to go the super cynical route here.
Okay.
And then backtrack. And then woof.
And then woof.
Yeah. So the super cynical one is that there has been this kind of general trend of like wellness as euphemism for thinness, where you don't see diet books anymore. You see like wellness books. And one, you know, like in one interpretation, that's because we're in this more enlightened age that isn't so focused on weight. In a less sort of optimistic interpretation, it's all just kind of euphemistic. And I guess in one interpretation of that ad, which I'm going to say we're both overanalyzing it now, although you're taking the straightforward approach. I'm taking the
we're in the weeds on Peloton. That's okay.
Definitely.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. So I think in one interpretation, like, yeah, of course it's not saying, she's not going up there and in kind of like with 80s aesthetic saying like, this Thigh Master allowed me to, you know, lose 3 inches off my, you know, my problem areas, you know, fine. She's not saying that, but like, it's whatever year it is now, 2019, and that wouldn't be very aesthetically of the moment. And I feel like it's possible that it's about the same thing as an at-home piece of exercise equipment has always been, which I would say, well, which is kind of the backtracking bit that I'm going to do in a moment. But like, I'm not sure that it's less about body in that sense, like aesthetics, for not announcing that it's about that. But then there is this question of why do people exercise? And I think I think it's complicated because I think it's all of the things, you know, and I think people exercise for how it makes them feel, for mental health benefits, for health benefits, for all sorts of benefits, and for physical benefits. And the question then that I'm thinking is like, well, what if she does use the bike because she likes how it makes her look? Is in part, is that then the bad reason? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Exercise is so good for you that honestly, I think that any reason that you choose to do it, as long as you're, you know, not overdoing it in an unhealthy way. I don't think there's such a thing as a bad reason to exercise. Like unless, you know, I mean, I suppose if your husband threatened to leave you if you didn't exercise, and so you're doing it like kind of, you know, chained to a radiator, like lifting cinder blocks over your head, filming yourself on your cell phone. Look, I'm doing it. Please let me eat. You know, that would be bad. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, so the funny thing about this ad, and of course we're now doing this too, but people were analyzing it like it might contain like a secret dark storyline, like it was some kind of M. Night Shyamalan film, when obviously, you know, taking at face value, this is a happy story that is designed to sell you a product. But what also kind of occurred to me as I was thinking about this Peloton ad way too much is that if we want to open up the landscape for discussion about exercise and women and why women work out, and to not make it so body focused, you know, to not make it about the 6-pack abs glistening with sweat, or, you know, a woman standing in one leg of her old jeans holding out the waistband like, I lost 500 pounds. The ads like this that show somebody just loving exercise, loving the sense of accomplishment and community that comes from doing it, like that is ostensibly how you would change that conversation. At least it would be part of it. Mm-hmm. So tearing down ads like this from a kind of a cynical perspective of like, well, a woman would never, you know, it certainly doesn't move us forward.
Well, it's the husband gift angle though, I think maybe was what was part of it. Like I wonder how it would have been. So there were two sort of alternate versions of the ad I had in mind. One would be if it was a wife giving this bike to her husband, where it would be probably presumed more about like fitness and kind of like staying healthy into middle age than, you know, I don't know if there would have been the same degree of assumption that the wife just wants her husband to have a great ass, you know, even if maybe she does, but that's not going to be maybe the cultural assumption. And the other is if it had been either spouse getting the other like outdoor cycling equipment, and presumably that works all these muscles as well. But it would seem more like activity. Like there's something about at home that I think, yeah, I think that somehow like, I don't know that reads, and perhaps unfairly, as like fitness in the same way as like it seems like it would have to be more about the body than something that's outdoors, even though I think people totally get into any sort of sport for the whole range of reasons.
Yeah. I would say if it were just a stationary bicycle, that the criticisms of it and, you know, the idea that giving this to your wife is maybe only slightly less bad than giving her a vacuum cleaner for Christmas, would hold a little bit more water. The fact that it's like this extremely high-end, extremely interactive product that already has a cult following of people who love it exactly the way the woman in the ad loves it, makes it, I mean, to me, it's different. And maybe it's just because I'm coming from a place of already like extreme familiarity with Peloton. So I was like, clearly I am the target audience for this ad, and it's a damn shame that I really, really don't want one.
Oh, well, sorry, Peloton.
Yeah. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
I mean, if they want to give me a free bike, I'll, you know.
If they want to send me, if they would like to send me either a treadmill without any interactive component, the treadmill is too icy here in Canada for running outside, which I prefer, or frankly, a vacuum cleaner, because ours is kind of crummy.
Yeah.
You know, Peloton.
Does Peloton make vacuum cleaners? This is going to be,
I think that would be amazing. Level.
You vacuum workout, which I mean, it can be. If you've ever tried to vacuum a carpet that's like covered in pet hair.
I can't imagine the situation you described. Well, I guess
because poodles don't shed.
Poodles don't really shed, but you know, with a baby crawling around the rug all the time, there's a lot of, I'm hyper aware of what vacuum does and doesn't do. And yeah, if there's a Peloton interactive vacuum where I could film myself vacuuming, sure.
Yeah. Working all of the body parts with this.
Absolutely. So I think are you ready for our next topic?
I am. As soon as we, you know, announce our Kickstarter for the Peloton vacuum cleaner that we're going to develop. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you should subscribe, though, to Feminine Chaos on Patreon, and that will, the subliminal messages in our minds to purchase all the Pelotons. It's actually like a few blocks from me, the Peloton store in Toronto.
I didn't know they had a store.
I pass it frequently. So, one day I think I'm going to the new Eataly to buy cheese, but I will just get sidetracked and pick up a few Pelotons.
Yeah. Maybe somebody will come running out of the store and press one upon you against your will, because
it could happen. It could happen to any of us.
Thing. But yes, for more on our Peloton thoughts or more where this came from, do subscribe to Feminine Chaos on Patreon. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, it's time to segue into the next portion of our holiday themed discussion, which I think is banal chatter at holiday parties. Is it harmless, or does it perpetuate patriarchy?
Definitely very harmful. The fact that you would even raise this as a question, Kat. I mean, I don't even know. I'm going to have to find some sort of blockchain that would, on Twitter, to block everybody who has even thought about following somebody who follows somebody who follows somebody who follows you.
Oh my gosh.
It is that fraught of a possibility that holiday chit-chat might be innocuous.
Right. What you really need is an IRL blockchain that would allow you to mute people who start to say banal things to you at holiday parties, instead of just tolerating it like a normal person, like we've all been doing for eons.
Well, that actually gets to, I guess we're going to have to set up what we're talking about, but just there is this sort of fascinating online versus offline thing. Like when people talk about real life on Twitter. Okay, so that's kind of the context for this.
Yes. So, we should just
let's say what this is.
Yeah. There was recently a discussion on Twitter, where these things often take place, centering around a tweet by a woman named Jennifer Wright, who I should just say right now, I know her in real life. She's a totally lovely person. I think that this tweet was supposed to be a joke. But she wrote how she had been at a party, and was having a conversation with some lady, some stranger. And she told this woman that her husband does dishes, and the lady responded, "Oh, you've got him well trained." And, per Jennifer Wright, she says that she wishes that she had said, "No, I don't have him well trained. He's an adult, responsible man. Did you marry a child who can't take care of himself?" And like I said, I think the tweet was a joke, because nobody genuinely wishes that they were, in hindsight, unbelievably aggressively rude to somebody who didn't actually say anything wrong to them. But the responses to this conversation and the responses that you see surrounding this topic generally of, oh, I was at a party and somebody said something slightly banal and maybe not perfectly politically correct to me, was basically hell yeah, I wish too that you had nailed that bitch to the wall, And
these were famous writers.
Yes.
Getting in on this. Yes. And you had a tweet as well.
I did. I pointed out, maybe unwisely, that this is the type of thing people who get nervous at parties sometimes say, as a sort of a low stakes joke. When they're having a conversation.
The well-trained remark.
Yeah, well, yeah. Just invoking there is a cat situation going on here. Invoking the trope of the clueless husband, which, I suppose, and I do now know, thanks to the response that I got to, admitting that I might make a joke like this at a party, if I were nervous and didn't know the person I was talking to very well. I did hear from some relatively high profile people, that to make a joke like this is annoying and incredibly harmful and, is deeply insidious in that it perpetuates patriarchy and bad values and all of the other things.
Well, that was weird. It was that whole episode, because I think we talked about this a bit. I don't remember in what, like where, but the whole, like that joke about the well-trained, the fantasy response of, like, I guess your marriage isn't like that. Like, what if this what if this party guest's marriage is where, like, the husband never does dishes and she's been stewing about that for 5 to 55 years, and like, it just seems like it's yelling at the wrong person, kind of. Like, it's an understandable thing to be annoyed at these gender roles. What's not understandable is why the fantasy involves screaming at, was it a woman who made the joke? Or was it a man? Yeah, if it was, I feel like that matters and makes it potentially not just kind of like petty, but cruel.
Yeah, I mean, it is, I guess, probably worth noting that a person who makes a comment like that is very likely to be telling you something about what her marriage is like, or what the marriages she's seen around her have been like. It's not an insult to you, the person who's receiving what is supposed to be a compliment.
I think I can literally hear my husband doing dishes in the other room as we're having this conversation. So, I should virtue. What was that? Why was it about virtue? Oh, virtue. It's supposed to be virtue. Why did they say it was virtue signaling? I don't know. All I can say is that if you try to make mild self-deprecating jokes about your own social anxiety on Twitter, there are certain people who will come out of the woodwork intent on taking it very personally. It's just, okay, so what part of this episode really reminded me of the thing that I know I've talked about on here before, but that, like, I continue to find kind of the, like, classic example of this is, like, tipping Twitter, where someone will go on Twitter and say, if you don't tip, 300% on a latte, you are a bad person. We all know this. Retweeted like 10,000 times. And it'll be like, and then you're, at the line for the coffee shop, and like nobody is actually doing that. It's not a thing that people do in real life because it just doesn't make sense, and it's just not how the world is. And I feel like that's kind of where, like, the sort of general idea with this sort of comeback, that's the word I was looking for before, the comeback, like that you would say something that's so Twitter, that's so online in a real life situation. It seemed to have something, it really related to that way that people can be sort of very, like, hypersensitive in a way that only works, or performatively hypersensitive in a way that only works online. Yes. And that you just know nobody really is in real life, Yeah,
that's the funny thing is, everybody's sort of chiming in to say, like, oh yeah, like, I wish you had. But if in real life somebody said something like this to you, a stranger, like, at a random holiday party, and your response was so snide and so nasty, the entire party would come to a screeching halt, and everyone would, turn and not be like, the whole room wouldn't erupt in applause. People would wonder why you were being so incredibly rude to, like, your mother-in-law's friend.
It's
not just that you wouldn't do it. It's that if you did do it, you would have to answer for it, because you would have really, massively violated these, social conventions that allow us to all just kind of get along with each other, even when somebody maybe says something a little unoriginal after their second glass of punch or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's completely this whole, like, what gets rewarded online and offline being so different, right? Like, offline, getting along, being reasonable, having the thought about why somebody else's joke was not great and maybe not, and picking your battles, right? Like, if this had been like a really hateful joke, speaking up. If not, leaving it. And I think if somebody, so I'm trying to think, if somebody said that to me at a party, if a woman said it, I think I would just I can't even imagine much thinking about it. If a man said it, it seems like the kind of thing to maybe talk to friends about later, but certainly not like, I don't think I would think it's nothing. Like, it's not, like, it's a kind of, like, it is a sexist joke in a way, but it's not like a sexist joke, capital S, capital J style, where you would have to, where there'd be anything to say about it. You know what I mean? It tells you that the person you're talking to has certain assumptions that are, or is just nervous and kind of tapping into like cultural in the ether assumptions about
yes, exactly.
marriage. But like, it's not something to be angry about. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thing about it too, is there's a sense, especially when this stuff gets talked about online, that there's no context in which you can ever just relax. That we all have to be like at maximum, in maximum warrior mode all the time, even in a completely stakeless conversation, with somebody who has no impact on your life, who you're not in a position to, to lobby or persuade, who you're never going to see again. Mm-hmm. The idea that you can, that the stakes are so high when it comes to talking about gender roles in terms of marriage and housework and childcare, that, you can never let a joke, even from some, random nobody at the punch bowl at your holiday Christmas party, pass without interrogating it.
Yeah.
That, obviously that's not how things work in real life.
I mean, I'm trying to think, like, I was in a situation not so different from this, not at a Christmas party or anything like that, but this was years ago. I was with my now husband. We were looking at apartments in Astoria, Queens. I remember this. And we were in some real estate office, trying to see if there was a good apartment for us to rent. And I was very insistent that, not that I think we ended up actually finding this at all, but I had wanted a dishwasher. I had really wanted a dishwasher. And we were told, I don't remember if it was a man, I think it was a man in the office, said, "Oh, you don't need a dishwasher." And then like points to me like that I would be the dishwasher.
Oh.
And we were both grad students, like there was no assumption in our relationship that was the case. It was an assumption on the part of this person in a real estate office. I believe an older man. And I remember it years later because it was memorable, but I also don't remember thinking to be like angry, if that makes sense. Like, it just seemed kind of like, I guess what I think is missing from the whole online discourse is like, you either can't care at all. Like, I feel like I'm constantly coming back to this, but like, why can't something be like a bit sexist and you can be like, without it, like, I don't feel like the options are either this was nothing at all, I do not care, it was not sexist, it didn't matter, or, oh my God, this is the biggest outrage of the century. Like, something could have been a little sexist, you could not really care, right, like that seems like a position that is somehow impossible now. Right.
It should be possible for something to be a little sexist or invoke a sexist trope, and also ultimately be not a big deal. It's like, I acknowledge that this happened and this was a thing, and yet I'm not going to rail about it or wish that I'd railed about it because it ultimately makes no difference. For the record, that dishwasher joke, I say that about myself all the time. We don't have a dishwasher except for me. But if somebody said that to me, or if my husband said it about me, I'd probably be like, that's not okay when you say it. But I wouldn't say it out loud. I would just think it.
I think that's reasonable. So speaking of dishes, I think this is the perfect segue.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Speaking of things that you can't put in a dishwasher.
As I understand it, I don't know. Do you have this? Do you have the product in question?
Oh, Le Creuset. No, I am not that fancy.
Yeah. I don't even quite know what it does.
Le Creuset. Well, I mean, so
it's a Dutch oven, is that it?
Yeah, it's like a fancy Dutch oven.
I don't have a Dutch oven at all. It seems useful. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh, they are useful. Okay. Yeah, sure. Especially if you want to make something like a pot roast or a cassoulet.
Okay.
All of these things that require a long, slow cook in something heavy bottomed, made of cast iron. That's what an oven is good for.
I newly have an Instant Pot, and I'm trying to figure out how that works, but who knows?
Does your Instant Pot have a Star Wars theme?
It doesn't have any theme.
Oh.
But I've heard that Le Creuset can have a Star Wars theme, and why has that been controversial?
Yeah, so you should frame this one, because I
don't remember what his last...
Staley.
Staley, thank you. Willie Staley, who is an editor, I believe, or a writer at the time, an editor, I think, at the New York Times.
Story editor.
Who has a great Twitter. I guess we probably both follow this Twitter.
Yes.
It's a very, very good account. One of those, like, there are a few people who have accounts where, like, I would just retweet and favorite, like, 90% of what they put when I see it, and then I feel like they're going to think I'm strange, but I just like their content. He's one of those people, like, good content. But this was amazing, this whole episode, where some people did not like his content. And it was, what was the tweet? Something about how he didn't he didn't believe in the existence of the type of guy who would want to be given.
Yeah, or he was mystified by the existence of the type of guy who would either purchase for himself or want a Star Wars themed Dutch oven from Le Creuset.
And these are very expensive Dutch ovens, right?
Yeah, these are like $400. So it's like a $400 Dutch oven.
Okay, for Canadian listeners, that's $1,000.
That looks like R2-D2. Yeah.
Well, people got angry about this online, like really, really angry. And it kind of took on this life of its own, because I don't really know. And what I guess fascinated me, maybe us, about this episode is just how, like, it was this kind of extreme case of some sort of nothing online blowing up into, like, how dare he? And it wasn't even clear. I guess because his assumption was that this cooking equipment was intended for a man, when didn't he know
that women
also make a stew sometimes?
Yeah.
And
didn't he know that bitches be cooking all the time? but this was the funny thing about it, is that, you know, you have somebody who sees a Star Wars themed, vastly expensive piece of cookware and imagines that this is for a really nerdy, really wealthy, really geeky man. And that this is deeply offensive because he didn't automatically assume that cookware was designed to be used by and marketed to women.
I guess it depended on whether you saw it as more nerd paraphernalia or cooking ware. But then I guess what was just so funny about it was that it elicited those responses, sort of like when people make these, when you get these men who make it sort of like an actually bad tweet of, I don't like women who wear their hair in funny colors. And then you have all the women replying with, look at me, I wear my hair in funny colors, haha, you know? Mm-hmm. But instead you had all these women like, look at me with my nerdy cookware, like, or whatever, you know? It's like, okay, I don't know. It seems sort of ridiculous because, like, I thought what he was saying, and I totally got it, and it hadn't even occurred to me to think of this as sexist, was that, and I still don't think it's sexist, there is this thing called the male gift, okay, that comes up. I hear the cat, and it's amazing.
Oh, yeah, he's a rumbly boy.
But there is such a thing, like the male gift guide, the male Christmas gift, what to get for the man in your life. And it's always this hilarious thing.
It's always like leather, whiskey, cigars, leather cigars made of whiskey. Yeah.
But it's like these accessories that are either like some sort of weird, like man version of things that women would be expected to want. And they just, I mean, I find it funny because I used to think that I just by some like fluke, or maybe not by some fluke, had never even like so much as been on a date with a guy who would want anything from a male gift guide. And then I start to think like maybe this is just something that men don't actually generally want, and that male gift guides are this kind of thing where like certain types of products in our society are just like much more marketed to women than men, and that like it is this kind of reach always like, here's the type of things you'd buy for a woman, but the man version, or like this seems man-like. Here it is, you know? and like maybe men don't actually want this in general, not just men I've happened to know, but like just in general. And that I thought that's the spirit I took this as, in like, look at this ridiculous male gift guide item.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. I didn't even get that far in my analysis because I was stuck on the idea of having enough money to own one of these and also wanting one that looks like a droid. I mean, even as a, person who likes Star Wars a lot, and, my husband's an even bigger Star Wars fan than I am. And even he, I don't think, would be particularly interested in, making a pot roast in a Dutch oven that looks like BB-8. Just doesn't really, I don't know. It just does seem like such a niche set of stars that have to align for somebody to have the capacity to purchase one of these, to also want one of these. And then I'm just
niche, but also kind of universal. I mean, I could see it selling because these are like two popular things, Yeah. And I guess it's a kind of interesting gift, maybe in that like it is kind of one thing would be the kind of like, maybe it is a sort of, I don't know, is the idea, what would be the best defense of it is if it is sort of stereotypically masculine and it's encouraging men to cook. But maybe it could be a Peloton style ad where the woman who wants her husband to make a stew is like, gets a thank you video.
Right. Well, I mean, I was just thinking that these are basically like the Peloton of cookware, but also really geeky. I'm also sort of, I've been sitting here just kind of like almost too distracted by this image to talk. But when you make something in one of these, at the end, when you go to serve it, it's basically like you'd be pulling off R2-D2's head and scooping his guts out onto your plate, which is just really disturbing to me.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure who R2-D2 is, but I'll take your word for it.
He's the little beepy blue and white bot that doesn't speak English. He makes beeping noises. I'm not going to speak R2-D2 on camera. But you can look it up on YouTube. He's not the gold one that looks like a person. He's the little one that, he rolls.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to defend that tweet and say it's fine, not offensive. I don't know why people are upset.
Because people love to get upset. I mean, this is what you tap into whenever one of these outrages strikes, whether it's about somebody, not perfectly positioning their tweet about the Star Wars cookware, or somebody expressing their regret at not having been really rude to somebody at a party, or, people flipping out about the Peloton ad, that there's it's fun to pile on. Unless you're the person underneath the pile, and then it's not fun at all.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap this one up. Yeah. But don't forget, there's more feminine chaos, bonus content, extra special, and Patreon.
Hot like a pot roast coming out of R2-D2's head on Patreon.
Yeah, and you can try that as a gift for the person you were thinking of buying a Peloton and an R2-D2 Le Creuset. It's cheaper than either of those.
A lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And arguably better.
I think so.
This has been Feminine Chaos. See you next time.
It certainly has.